Welcome back, everyone. It's Dr. Lindner. In this short video, we are going to talk about one of the first systems called the integumentary system. Now, one of the important parts of the integumentary system is going to be the skin. It's really skin, hair, and nails, but for our purposes, we're going to focus for the lab mostly on the skin. Now, the reason why we cover the skin first is because the skin is made up of the 4 different types of tissues that we already mentioned. The skin is made up of epidermis. It's made up of, the skin is made up of epithelial tissue. It's made up of connective tissue. There's muscle tissue, and there's nerve, all 4 types that we can find. So when we look at the skin, let's make this blue here. We have a few different layers. We have the superficial layer that's called the epidermis. That's this upper portion. And the epidermis we will divide into 5 microscopic levels, which we'll talk about shortly. The dermis only has 2 levels. It has this superficial 20% called the papillary region or papillary layer. And then the remaining 80%, that's the deeper part, is the reticular layer. Okay, so that's the second layer. And then the third, which is the deepest layer, is the hypodermis, also known as the sub-Q or the subcutaneous. Now you can see that we have the hair shaft that travels through the skin. Within the dermis itself, there's a lot of accessory structures that we can find here. We see that we have a sebaceous gland, which is our oil gland. We have a sudiferous gland called a sweat gland. We have nerve fibers. We have lamellated corpuscles, which is also neurological. We have muscle, the erector pili muscle. We have tactile corpuscles. Again, this is nerve. This is nerve related. This is nerve related. So we have neurological. We have muscle. And remember, glands are modified epithelium. We have blood vessels that we can see. We see all these capillaries in blood. Remember, blood is connective tissue. We have fat. That's connective tissue. Arteries, veins, that's connective tissue. All right, so it's really important to understand that the skin is made up of all 4 types of tissue. The epidermis is going to be mostly made up of epithelium. Okay. The epidermis is mostly, especially the top layer, stratified squamous epithelium, and it's avascular. We will talk about thin skin versus thick skin. What I'm going to show you under the microscope is going to be thick skin, where we have 5 different layers of keratinocytes. Like the palm of the hand and the soles of the foot are considered thick skin. So we're going to have 5 layers compared to 4 layers, and I'll show you what those are. The 5 layers of strata, they are called strata, which means layers. So we have stratum corneum, stratum lucidum, stratum granulosum, stratum spinosum, and stratum germinativum. And there's a few silly mnemonics. Some say, can Lucy get some bagels? Can Lucy get some bagels? The B is for basal, but it's also interchangeable. Some say Cher loves getting skin Botox. Again, another silly mnemonic. So let's take a look at these layers. And again, this is from superficial to deep. The stratum corneum is the uppermost layer. and that the germinatavum, also known as the basal layer, that's the deepest layer. And it takes about 4 weeks. It's about a 4-week journey for these stem cells that are down here to migrate and push upward to eventually become the corneum, which is dead cells that slough off. So it's about 4 weeks to go from the bottom layer to the top layer. And that's why it's important to change your bedding, your pillowcases, your bed sheets, to change them and wash them because of all the dead cells, skin cells that are located there. When someone has psoriasis, that time can be cut down to 4 or 5 days, where the cells are regenerating and they're pushing up to these dead cells very, very quickly. So here's the apical surface. And here we have Cher loves getting skin Botox because the germinatavum and the basal are usually interchangeable. It's kind of within that same area. Okay, so this uppermost portion is the stratum corneum, and that's anywhere between 25 to 30 layers of stratified squamous epithelium. Okay, these are the cells that slough off. Now, the basal layer or the germinative layer or the germinatavum, that's the stem cells. Those cells are going to be pushing upwards in this direction. And we said it takes about 4 weeks to get there. And you can see they slough off and they break away. And then you make new ones. Then we have the stratum lucidum. Now, this is the layer right here that we have in thick skin, but we don't have it in thin skin regions. So in the thin skin, you have 4 skin layers. You just take the stratum lucidum out. In the areas like the palms of the hand and the soles of the feet, where we need thicker skin due to excessive friction in those areas, we'll have the stratum lucidum, which is this layer here. Okay, it's lucid. It's clear. Then just deep to that, we have this granular layer that has loaded with granules called the stratum granulosum. Those granules degranulate and they release some lipids and some oils into the skin. Then deeper to that, we have the stratum spinosum, which looks like a spiny layer. Spinosum, it's spiny. And then the inferior most layer, part of the epidermis, is the stratum germinatavum or stratum basal, interchangeable terms. It's where we have the stem cells that can multiply and start pushing upward. Once we're below that epidermis, now we're in the dermal layer, right? We have the dermis, where we have dermal papilla. These hills are the dermal papilla, which are involved along with these ridges, right? They're just hills and valleys involved in creating your fingerprint. Everyone's fingerprint is unique due to the dermal papilla, those ridges, right? The hills and the valleys. So in the dermis, we have these 2 layers, the papillary layer and the reticular layer, right? The upper portion or more superficial is the papillary, and then the deeper is the reticular. These are called Pacinian corpuscles. These are, or also called laminated or lamellated corpuscles. These are for deep pressure receptors, and these are for superficial touch, right? Because it's closer to the surface. So if someone taps on your shoulder, gently taps it, it's these that will pick it up, these free nerve endings. But the Pacinian corpuscles, which are deeper, is for deeper pressure. Okay. These up here are called Meissner's corpuscles. And those Meissner's corpuscles are your tactile corpuscles. They're for light touch. But the Pacinian corpuscles, which are lamellated corpuscles, which are here, these are for deeper pressure. We do have the hair shaft, the exposed portion of it. This right here is the sebaceous gland, which is your oil gland. The oil gland secretes the oil and it starts to move upward in this direction and eventually creates this watertight seal around the exposed shaft of the hair. And it doesn't allow bacteria to get in there. It doesn't allow water to get in there, right? It's water resistant. And it's like antibacterial and has some antifungal properties to keep bacteria and fungus off the skin. Here is the erector pilae muscle. The erector pilae muscle, when it contracts, it pulls in this direction, which makes your hair stand on end. It's that muscle that gives you the goosebumps, right? Kind of walking down a dark alley, and it's a sympathetic response to kind of alert you of danger. If you've ever seen two cats that are about to fight, how all the hair on their tail and on their back goes up, it's those erecti pilae that stand on edge, like the fight or flight response. Your sebaceous glands are the oil glands. Your sudiferous are the sweat glands. Ceruminous are called wax glands, and mammary glands are milk glands. Okay, let me show you the skin model now. We'll go through the skin model picture, see if we can get to that. Okay. Okay, so if we look here on the left-hand side, you'll see Roman numeral 1, Roman numeral 2, and Roman numeral 3. Roman numeral 1, if you look off to the right, that's the epidermis. That's the top layer that has 5 layers of skin. Those 5 layers we can see here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, right? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Cher loves getting skin Botox. So epidermis is number 1, which is composed of numbers 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. 2 is the stratum corneum. That's Cher. Loves number 3, stratum lucidum. Cher loves getting stratum granulosum, number 4. And then we have skin Botox, spinosum, and the basal layer. Okay. And the basal layer is also interchangeable at number 7, the germinatavum. So Cher loves getting skin Botox, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then we have number 2, which is going from here to here. Number 2 is now the dermis. And there's a lot of other structures that we see there that are important. Let's look at number 22. Number 22 right here, this purple area, which is the same as this right here, that purple gland, that is the sebaceous gland. You want to put sebaceous gland and not oil gland on a test. Let's look at number 20. We have this muscle right here, which is the same as this right here. Number 20 is the erector pilae muscle. Look at the spelling there. Erector pilae muscle is number 20. Let's look at this right here, the white gland here and the white gland here. This is the sudiferous gland, which is your sweat gland. And then you have its duct right here. Number 9 is the sudiferous duct. Number 9, this is the sudiferous duct. Number 11 is the sudoriferous gland. Down here, number 12, that's your deep pressure receptor, which is known as the Pacinian corpuscle. The yellow fat cells down here, number 13, that's the adipose cell. And the Pacinian corpuscle and the adipocytes, or the adipose cell, that's found in number 3, which is the hypodermis or the subcutaneous. The hypodermis or subcutaneous. Okay, let's look at this one also. Again, another model, but showing the same structures. Now, if we look on the right, we see numbers 1, 2, and 3. Number 1 is the epidermis. Roman numeral 2 is the dermis. Roman numeral 3 is the subcutaneous. Now, if we look at the 25, 24, 23, 25, 24, 23, Scher loves getting, stratum corneum, lucidum granulosum. Scher loves getting. Then we have skin Botox, 21 and 20. Skin Botox, stratum spinosum, stratum basal layer. Okay, so that's 25, 24, 23, 21, and 20. And again, you see the 22 because it's interchangeable with the germinativum. Okay, then we have, let's look at number 1 right here, pointing to that purple gland. It's just a cross section. That's your sebaceous gland, which is your oil gland. Number 4, that muscle right there is the erector pili muscle. Let's look at number 16 right here. That is your sudoriferous gland or sudiferous gland, which is your sweat gland. Let's look at number 5 up at the top right here. That's your Meissner's corpuscle, which is your tactile corpuscle for light touch, which is different than number 7 down here at the bottom, which is in the hypodermis. Number 7 is the Pacinian corpuscle for deep pressure. Number 14 at the bottom, that's your adipose cell. Adipose, which are your fat cells. Okay. Okay, if you know those structures, I will be very happy.